Hey Alex, great to meet you. Here at Stability AI, we're spending a lot of time helping brands figure out how to take AI from, a number of interesting experiments to creative workflows that actually scale and drive value for you. I'd love to, hear more about what you're responsible for and what's top of mind for you creatively this year.
Yeah. Hey, Sam. Nice to meet you as well. So, I run our marketing operations here, including our in house creative production for our stable snacks brand portfolio. So, we currently require thousands of assets to be created each month for our different regions, and we're looking into AI tools to speed up our content. So, I feel like we're in a place where we need to make a decision on our AI strategy this year, but we really don't have a game plan yet because it would be a really big change in how we're approaching creative production.
Yeah, no, look, we could totally resonate. Actually, that's where a lot of teams are at the moment. I guess for me, a good place to start would be understanding what you've already tried, what's working, what's not working at the moment.
Yeah, so we tried a few of the big models that everyone talks about. You probably know who they are, and we've spent months trying to get them to work. It turns out AI is actually hard, and I can't afford to spend another 6 months on a tool that my team ultimately abandons. But I also can't just sit here and do nothing while everyone else figures it out.
Hold up. Pause. Here's the first thing you should expect: no one has a plan. Before you take any vendor meeting, talk to your team. What have you already tried? Which AI tools have let you down and why? The more specific you can be about your frustrations, the faster you'll figure out if a vendor can actually solve them, or if they're just going to sell you the same thing with different branding. Now back to the convo.
So what I'm hearing here, Alex, is that you're kind of caught between needing to adopt AI for all the reasons why brands are adopting it, being able to deliver content that, matches your quality, but it's cheaper and it's quicker. And what I'm hearing is that you've not quite found that approach that scales for you yet.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. The tools are either these chat interfaces that don't work when 10 different people need to use them every day, or they require a huge upfront investment that I just don't have the budget for. And obviously, most critically, when we try to generate campaign imagery for our chip brands, it just doesn't look like us. And we've got very particular photography styles, color palettes, even like the way products are positioned, the lighting angles, that stuff matters, right? And the one thing that we really can't compromise on is how our products show up.
Yeah, totally. I guess, for me in practice, you're speaking around this photography style. I'm really trying to visualize it. Do you happen to have any brand guardrails or any example shots that you might be able to share with me, just so I can get a bit of a visual flavor?
Sure, yeah, let me pull that up right now. So, this here is our stable snacks line. We have different chip SKUs depending on flavor and region. So, in the UK, for example, we call them crisps, and they're more salt and vinegar flavored. So, you can see the elements that make up our brand here. We've got the hand drawn illustrations on the packaging, the photorealistic chip, the forced perspective in our lifestyle photography with interaction from the point of view of the chips. So, you can see like the hand reaching for the bag, and we've spent years building that identity. A brand is not built in a day.
Well, of course, right. And for that reason, you don't want to just throw, all of this nuance of your brand into a black box. And so I guess I've got a question. When you're trying to generate something using these out of the box capabilities, like what's the experience? What happens?
Yeah, we get really generic stock photo vibes, like happy people enjoying snacks, which like fine, but then it just looks like every other chip brand. And really nuanced things will be off. So the models are super impressive the first couple times you generate something and it'll look great, but then it starts to fall apart. So things will be off like the composition. Or my personal favorite is when the chip bag gets weird text on it that says Steeble Stacks.
Notice what Alex just did? The more specific you can be, not just we need lifestyle imagery, but natural light, warm tones, candid moments, the better a vendor can show you if they're actually a fit. Bring examples of your brand guidelines in photography if you can.
Yeah, look, it's great to hear this actually. That generic AI output is the exact problem we're trying to solve for at the moment. So, if all right with you, let me flash a number of slides just to give you a little bit more flavor around what I mean when I talk about trying to solve this generic AI problem. So here at Stability AI, we've been at the forefront of generative AI. We've built models like Stable Diffusion that are now used, across creative teams all around the globe. But as adoption grew, we started working closely with a number of enterprise teams, and we actually identified a gap. And that gap was between what the technology could do and what creative production actually requires. So what we saw is that there's actually a lot of excitement around AI, right? But when it comes to professional creative environments, it isn't a magic wand. Teams are quickly finding out that a lot of these out of the box generic models don't match all of the brand nuance that you've just described to me. It doesn't meet those standards, and it doesn't fit into workflows that your teams can collaborate and use. So the challenge that we're trying to solve isn't just around generating images, it's around making them usable for your brand and scalable for your demand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm so tired of hearing all about how AI is going to save the day. It's all about this exciting AI tool and that exciting AI tool, when in reality, it's actually added to my pressure instead of alleviating it.
Exactly that, right? We're trying to move from the realm of magic to reality. And so instead of treating AI like its own standalone tool, what we're doing is we're collaborating with brands like yourself to build an ecosystem that sits around that. So, what do I mean by this ecosystem? So, what we're doing is we're actually taking your inputs, we're training a number of custom models that understand your brands, your products, and then what we're doing is we're deploying these in custom workflows, custom design workflows that really fit how your teams actually want to produce content.
Okay, so custom training, definitely familiar with that. I kind of want to pick at that a little bit. How does it really work? Because I've heard that before. I've talked to other vendors about it. It's either insanely expensive and takes months to implement, or it's already in the product, it's self service. My team tries it out, but it doesn't actually work well for anything. So, can you tell me a little bit more about what exactly goes into customization that will actually make a difference for my team?
Look, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's a great question. Do you know what? Let me start with what difference customization actually makes. So, when it comes to it, um, teams are trying to get a lot of on-brand results with prompting alone. And what actually ends up happening is that they end up writing a number of very detailed prompts, things that cover things like the lighting, the composition, the tone, the actual products, all of the things that make, your brand. And what you can see here is, we've got a heavily detailed prompt. And even then, results vary because the model is doing a lot of guesswork. A lot of guesswork. It's trying to figure out what do you mean by stable chips or stable crisps, for example. It's trying to understand what does your brand actually look like. And so when we look at training a custom model, those visual rules are built in. So instead of your team having to engineer every prompt, your team gets on-brand outputs by default using very simple prompts. So what we're doing is actually we're moving away from the art of prompting and the art of prompting engineering to ensuring that the brand intelligence is already built in. And when it comes to actually achieving this brand consistency, it's not a one step piece. When it comes to actually training these models, it's actually a workflow. And so when it comes to this workflow, what are we actually doing? What we're doing is we're fine tuning these models and applying precision adjustments so that things like your lighting and your product details, all of the cultural nuance that you might have, they all stay consistent across your outputs. So your team doesn't have to actually manage this complexity. The workflow handles it.
Wow. Okay. So it looks like there are a lot of deliberate decisions you're making. It's not just we pressed a button and this worked. It's we really thoughtfully designed this step by step to make sure it's capturing all of the right elements.
And this is where you need to ask clarifying questions. In the vendor world, AI is a broad term. Some are just giving you a fancy prompt box. Others are actually fine tuning models based on your specific data. Those are two very different worlds with two very different outcomes. To see which one you're actually getting, ask, what data do you need? How long is the training? And can you show me another brand's results? If they can't explain the tech simply enough for you to repeat it to your team, it's probably not the right fit.
So my next question, I guess, would be what exactly do you need from my team to do this customization? Like, does it take thousands of images? What exactly is the investment from us?
Yeah, so we understand that when it comes to some of these brand needs and brand maturity, we're meeting a lot of enterprise customers at different kind of stages. So you ask a data person how much data you want, they're going to ask you for as much as possible. But from our standpoint, what we like to start with is the just like the brand guardrails that you just shared with me. Let's start with those brand guardrails and a small set of campaign images that really represent your brand and your products. From there, what I'm going to do is we're going to hand over those files to our applied research team, and they're going to review those and they're going to handle the customization from there.
Got it. Okay. So, thinking about what we're actually trying to accomplish day to day, I would say localization is a big challenge for us. So, we want to be able to ideally empower our different regional teams to use the right assets. And right now, that's like an 8 to 12 week process. And if we could cut that down to even 2 weeks, that would be amazing. Is that something you could do?
Yeah, totally. I think, what I've been alluding to so far is talking about the brand intelligence layer and the workflow layer. But actually, this is also where the user interface becomes really powerful as well. So, in this example here, what we've done is we've actually built these campaign style presets for this stable socks brand, which represents different types of campaigns that they want to build. But actually, we can take the same approach and create localization presets for different regions as well. This is actually giving your teams the ability to generate visuals that stay on brand whilst adapting to all of the local cultures and contexts. And what we're doing here is your regions are going to be able to get that relevant content without the need of bespoke prompting as it's handled within a custom preset.
Very cool. Okay. I can see how this could make a difference. I guess my last question is we have a really strict IT team. It's hard to even test tools in our company. I'm nervous about tools that aren't going to meet our security requirements. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you handle data, indemnification, things like that?
Well, yeah, totally, Alex. Look, we hear this a lot, and you're asking the right questions. Enterprise teams, you do need the clarity on things like security, data handling, even things like legal protections like indemnification before anything moves forward. And so, we're very comfortable with the enterprise requirements, and we can work with your IT and procurement teams very early in this process so that testing can happen safely and without friction.
Make sure the AI solution checks the boxes. You'll need to pass your company's procurement process, and there are a lot of things that AI vendors are missing, even the ones that say they're enterprise ready.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I guess, is there a way to test how this works?
Well, of course. With your brand guardrails, what we can do is take a small set of those assets, and within like 2 weeks' time, hopefully, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my applied research team to run an initial build and play back some of those custom workflows. How does that sound with you?
Sounds like a plan.
Hey Alex, great to see you again. Look, I'm really excited. We've got some outputs to share with you based on the brand guardrails that you shared with us last week and some sample images as well. So let me know when you're ready to get into it.
Yeah, let's see what you've got.
Excellent. So, look, what our applied research team done was they took the data set that you gave us of the stable crisps, and what they did was they codified these into a number of custom tuned models. So, from us, the brand aesthetic, we really wanted to keep that. The things like the natural lighting, the candid kind of a style that you're going for, and those warm tones. And so, what you'll see is we've actually generated these images not only to make sure that we keep the consistency of your brand, but also so that we can show the localized variants of your brand as well. What are some of your initial thoughts?
Okay, yeah. Wow. I was not expecting that, to be honest. Like, this actually looks pretty darn close to our brand. Yeah, the lighting's right, the tones are right, even the way the product is positioned. Obviously, there are a few nuanced things that we would need to iterate on, like the facial expressions of the models and some of the settings and backgrounds. Wouldn't be quite what we do, but overall, I'm really impressed. This could be big for our team.
Great, and these are things that are very easy for us to iterate, with your brand guardrail. I think one of the things that we really wanted to get right was that product accuracy piece. What you can see here is that, we've got three different angles of your stable crisp bag, and they've all been AI generated. But actually, what you can see is we've been able to adhere and keep that product fidelity in all of the imagery as well.
Yeah, I mean, the logo is right, the colors are right, the way the bag crinkles looks accurate. Yeah, I'm impressed that you could pull this off.
I'm glad, that this really echoes that whole ethos we've been discussing over the past couple of weeks, right? Everything that we're doing is built with your brand in mind, which means that, when we're co developing these features, we're co developing them with you so that we can solve your most important kind of creative production use cases.
Yeah, this is awesome. I think it's definitely worth exploring further. I want to test a few more use cases. So I guess how do we get the ball rolling?
Totally. So what I can do is talk around our sprint process. And that sprint process happens usually over a couple of weeks. And what we do is we typically start by agreeing a small set of those high value use cases, the ones that matter to you most, and going to drive the most value for your business. Then what we do is we work on validating the workflow together, as we've done in this very short, presentation that we've just gone through. We want to generate outputs and refine those based on your feedback. I guess within a couple of weeks, we're looking to understand, will the solution work for you? Would it work for your team? And then we can actually start discussing how do we want to deploy this. We have multiple, deployment options, including via AWS, for example. And then lastly, it's all well and good us understanding, the technical validation, but I also have services to support articulating the business case internally as well, so that we can pair that with any formal quotation that we hand over to you.
This brings us to our last tip. Make sure it works. An AI vendor should be able to show you your outputs with your brand, your products, and your style. Not just generic demos, not just, here's what we did for another client. Before you start any pilot, get crystal clear on what exactly will be tested, who needs to be involved, what success looks like, and how you'll measure it. The more structured the pilot, the easier it is to make decisions at the end.
How does that sound?
That all sounds good to me. I'm excited to get started.
Okay, let's bring it home. You just watched what it looks like to evaluate an AI solution, from the first conversation to seeing custom outputs to planning a pilot. Here's your checklist for any vendor conversation you have. If you're ready to chat with us for real, use this QR code to get in touch with one of our experts to see how our AI can best work for you.